When it comes to airline mysteries, there is only one name that comes to mind: Malaysian Airlines MH370, but it was not the first incident to suddenly disappear in the air. Exactly 52 years before MH370, during the Cold War, a similar terrifying incident took place. On March 14, 1962, two large aircraft take off from California. Both were top-secret chartered planes of the U.S. military. One crashes in the snowy region of Alaska, and on the same day, the second plane, with 107 military commandos, flies in the air over the Pacific Ocean and disappears forever. The story begins on March 14, 1962. The world was divided into two large parts, and there was always an atmosphere of fear. In this situation, the U.S. military chose a very large and powerful aircraft, Lockheed L-1049 Super Constellation, for a secret mission. It was a Flying Tiger airline aircraft chartered by the U.S. Army. It was named Flying Tiger Line Flight 739. This flight had to go from California to Vietnam, where U.S. military officials had to train South Vietnamese troops against guerrilla warfare. Flight 739 had to make 4 stops for refueling before landing in Vietnam. The first stop was Honolulu International Airport in Hawaii, then Wake Island Airfield, then Andersen Air Base in Guam, and then Clark Air Base in the Philippines. But as soon as it took off from California, trouble began. On the way from California to Hawaii, when the aircraft was above the Pacific Ocean, ignition issue was reported in engine 1 and 3. Pilots tried everything according to the manual and checklist, but it was of no use. And because it was right in the middle of the world's largest ocean, the Pacific Ocean, not much could be done. Then the pilot continued his flight to Hawaii. The aircraft somehow landed at Honolulu International Airport in Hawaii in the evening. There, after the maintenance of the engines, the engineers declared the aircraft safe. It took off again successfully. Now their destination was Wake Island Air Force Base. Again, the same ignition issue began in both engines. It felt like the aircraft was stopping them from moving forward, but the captain and crew had no choice. Their next destination was 8 hours away, and they couldn't go back. They didn't give up and flew on and finally reached Wake Island. Here again, the engineers maintained the aircraft's engines, but this time there was no danger. After leaving Wake Island, the engine issue did not occur again, and after a peaceful 6-hour journey, the aircraft landed safely at the Andersen Air Force Base in Guam at night. The passenger and crew left, ate, and rested a little. Fuel was filled in the aircraft, but during this time a very strange incident occurred. The fuel-filling staff left after finishing their work, and for about 15 minutes, no one was near that big aircraft. The whole aircraft was standing alone and empty. When the time was up, everyone boarded again, and at about 11 o'clock local time at night, the aircraft took off from Guam. That night, the weather was fine and the sea was completely calm. Immediately after taking off from Guam, the captain contacted the radio station and instructed his departure to the offices of California, Manila, and Hong Kong. After 80 minutes of flight, the pilots contacted the air traffic controller and asked permission to increase their altitude from 10,000 feet to 18,000 feet. Guam ATC gave them permission. 3 minutes later, the ATC told them that they were now going out of radar range and their radar surveillance was now being terminated. After this point, the aircraft was not on any station screen. Now the only support they had to contact the world was the radio. 5 minutes later, the pilot broadcasted a message through the radio that they had now reached 18,000 feet, and the ATC also heard this message. According to flight rules over the sea, the pilot had to tell his position and fuel information on the radio every hour. 43 minutes later, the pilot gave a radio message that he was now 520 kilometers west of Guam. There was no mention of any trouble, fear, or any kind of malfunction in this voice, because after this, no contact with Flight 739 was ever made. An hour later, when the ATC in Guam tried to contact the aircraft, there was no response from the other side. When it was time to land at the Philippines base and the aircraft failed to reach there, a search operation was finally launched. If the rescue teams had any clue, it was only this location. After this, there was an endless sea to the Philippines. In that difficult period of the Cold War, a U.S. military commando ship had disappeared in the air in the middle of the sea. But then a ray of light was seen in this deep fog. An hour and 16 minutes after the last contact with the ship, a crew of a tanker ship named SS Lanson in the Pacific Ocean saw a strange sight in the sky. 5 crew members of the tanker saw a line of smoke in the sky that was going from left to right. Then that line hid behind the clouds, and suddenly there was a very big and powerful explosion. The crew saw that 2 balls of fire were falling from the sky towards the sea. One piece was very big and was coming down fast, while the other piece was small and was falling at a slow speed. According to the crew, this explosion was so severe that the deck of the ship lit up for a few seconds. The radar in the tanker recorded the location of this explosion 17 miles away from it. The tanker captain immediately changed his course and decided to go towards those falling pieces. When the tanker reached that place, everything was normal there. He continuously surveyed that place for 5.5 hours, set searchlights in the water, but there was no sign of a ship, a small piece of fire, or any human being. The next day, when this news reached the rescue teams, they made that place the center and started the largest search operation in the Pacific Ocean. For 4 consecutive days, water was sprinkled in the area of 190,000 square kilometers. After 8 days of this continuous operation, the rescue teams had now scoured the area of 520,000 square kilometers. After this, the United States stopped its search operation because it was impossible for anyone to survive in the ocean for 8 days. The day Flight 739 disappeared, another similar ship of Tiger Air crashed in Alaska. The common thing about these 2 flights was that both the ships were chartered by the U.S. military. Both were on top-secret missions, and both took off from California behind each other. This created a suspicion that perhaps these ships had been sabotaged from California. That is, there was a deliberate fault in them. Were the engine problems on the way really a problem, or was it part of the sub-planning? Another very strong theory was that because it was the era of the Cold War, some enemy countries such as the Soviet Union or its allies had planted a bomb on this ship. But this ship stopped all the way on the high-security military bases of the United States, where it seems impossible to drop a bomb. Then the investigators went to that stop in Guam. Remember those 15 minutes when the ship was completely alone after refueling, and the security there was also completely loose. The investigators suspected that perhaps in those 15 minutes, someone had taken advantage of the darkness and planted a bomb in the ship. This seems the most credible theory, but no solid evidence has been found to date. Some reports believe that this ship never blasted into the air, but had to send this ship to an enemy area on some other extremely secret mission. That's why it was pretended to be missing, and it was faked in the air and pretended to be in front of the world. But if this is really true, then what happened to those 107 people? Because none of them ever contacted their family. Or the ship really crashed on some other mission, but the place was somewhat out of those 520,000 square kilometers. There were a lot of possibilities, but no solid evidence has ever been found. The story of Flight 739 is not just a tragedy, but it is a mystery that forces us to think that sometimes the truth is deeper and darker than these seas. I hope you will like and share this video. Thank you so much for your lovely comments. See you in the next video.